Hello and welcome to the Festival of Pineapples. This is the live judging of the Pineapples Awards for Place, which is an awards program that seeks to recognise built environment projects and initiatives that make positive social impact on the wider place and its people. This is the judging of the category International Future Place. My name is Leah Stewart. I'm a director at Civic with a background in transport planning and street design, and I am your chair for this category. This category seeks to recognise the master plan for a well-designed future place anywhere in the world outside the UK that seeks to foster community, welcome visitors, attract tenants, contribute to urban life, and encourage people to dwell, live, work, connect, learn, or play. We have some absolutely great finalists to share with you. But first, here's a quick reminder of the rules. Each presenter has 10 minutes to pitch to the judges, and then the judges have 10 minutes to ask questions. I'll be keeping an eye on how the timing's going. After hearing all the presentations, the judges will deliberate in private to decide on the winner. And the winners will be announced at a fabulous awards party on the 22nd of April at Trinity Buoy Wharf in London. Tickets to the party are on sale now at thepineapples.co.uk. A selection of finalists will also be invited to present their project on stage at this summer's Festival of Place, which is on 10th of June at Box Park in Wembley in London. Passes to the festival are on sale now. Please feel free to use the emoji button below to cheer on our presenters today and share your comments in the chat. However, the judges will be the only ones asking questions today. If you want to make this is people who are watching today, if you want to make the presentation slides bigger, you can enable the full screen mode, so you'll see a pop-out button towards the top right of your viewing window. Right, that's the housekeeping over. It's time to meet our judges for this category. So please welcome. We have Daisy Narayanan, who is the Public Realm Director for the Crown Estate. Daisy trained as an architect and urban designer before focusing on sustainable transport and climate action over the last 2 decades. Now at the Crown Estate, she was formerly head of placemaking and mobility at the City of Edinburgh Council, where she led on delivering a citywide integrated approach to transport and placemaking. Daisy sits on the board of Architecture and Design Scotland and is a member of the NLA High Street Expert Panel. She is a member of the Evidence Group of Scotland's Climate Assembly. She has recently been awarded an MBE for services to inclusive urban planning and elected to the Fellowship of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. You're very welcome, Daisy. Next, we have Michaela Jackson, who is an assistant transport planner at Ardent Consulting. Over the last 5 years, Michaela Jackson has worked in Stirling to support the delivery of their flagship active travel project, Walk, Cycle, Live Stirling. She started with the team leading on community engagement and behaviour change and is now managing the delivery of active travel projects in Stirling. Michaela is passionate about all forms of sustainable transport, in particular how we use transport and placemaking as a lever to enhance wealth, well-being and connection. And finally, we have James Bothorpe, a company director at ARCS. James has over 20 years' experience in the creative and placemaking sectors, working with diverse clients, including the South Bank Centre, Nike Global, and the BBC. James has worked extensively in placemaking for clients including the Crown Estate, Eco World London, and Related Argent, consulting on strategy and leading the delivery of creative placemaking and leasing projects. He's the founder of Applied Research Collective Creative Studio and Kiosk World. James circumnavigated the world by bicycle in 2009 and made a descent of the Hudson River in a boat made of Manhattan's trash in 2015. So those are 3 judges. You're all very welcome. So now it's time to hear from our first project. First up is Wan Chai Connect, Wan Chai, Hong Kong for Public-Private Partnership with DCMS Studios, Architects, Urban Designers Hong Kong, and Bureau Happold. And we're presented by James Gibson, who's the Managing Director, and Liam Ferguson, Director, both from DCM Studios. So you've got 10 minutes, presenters, and then I think I return to the stage, so you'll get a warning that that's going to happen. Over to you, Liam.
First of all, it's myself, Liam Ferguson, and this is Mr. James Gibson.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm James. Liam said I'm projecting my voice because I think you may not be able to hear this very clearly. It's 10 o'clock here in Hong Kong. It's a little bit late. And, however, we're really looking forward to making this presentation about Wan Chai Connect. Can we get full screen? Can we get full screen?
No, I can't.
Can you control the next slide?
I can't. Yeah.
Okay. So look, you're looking at the project Wan Chai Connect. It's a vision. It's something that we personally, and it's a pro bono project that we've produced for the Hong Kong government at a time when they're planning to make a major redevelopment in Wan Chai. And we see an opportunity for this not to just be another set of commercial buildings, but an opportunity to connect what was the old Wan Chai to the North Wan Chai, which is a new development area, and make it back to one Wan Chai. It's called Wan Chai Connect. Give me the first slide.
Hold on. Oh.
First slide.
Can't make it move.
We're having trouble moving the slides, sorry.
Hold on.
We'll be right with you.
Oh no, this thing's going over the top of it. Ah. Oh. Let's just. Oh, please. Oh no, it's covering up the.
Well, difficulty here with moving.
Liam, I think if you could stop sharing and then reshare, and maybe if it's a PDF, that might be easier if you've got that.
PDF.
Just go back and reshare. You were doing it before. You'll share.
I'm also struggling to hear you. I don't know if you.
We're just trying to get. Just hold on. Hold
Okay.
on.
There we go. You can see that.
Can you see this one?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay. Okay. Here we go. So this is an old map of Wan Chai, and what it's showing is the dark blue area is the original Wan Chai in 1904. In 1920, there was a reclamation of the sea, which moved the seafront of Wan Chai to the dotted black line you can see in the center. And then there was a further reclamation in 1970, which became looked like we were going to get a great advantage of new land in Hong Kong. However, it created a major problem for us later, as you can see. You want to move to the next slide, Liam? So do that. If you look at the top left-hand corner, you can see the new reclamation happening on what was the waterfront. So the waterfront, where you can see on the left-hand side, is now an infill site ready for a new development. Unfortunately, at that time, Hong Kong hadn't planned exactly what they would do with that area, but they just felt there's a new land area that would be built with a new commercial development in the future. The bottom left-hand slide, you can see on the right-hand side, the new development that started to happen after that little highway that we had connecting east and west Hong Kong became a very dramatic 7-8 lane highway, which became a chasm between old Wan Chai, the original Wan Chai on the left, which is an old urban development going back hundreds of years, to what was they called North Wan Chai, which was totally disconnected. You don't see any footbridges there. There were very few. So the people on the north Wan Chai couldn't get to South Wan Chai, and that was a disaster, which is there today, to this day. They've built a highway underground tunnel, which is all good and well, and the traffic is now slightly less. Yeah. However, Wan Chai is no longer a waterfront community like it used to be. So you can see in the center there what we were talking about. We go back one slide there. In the middle of, one more. Yeah, in that middle of that slide in 1970, you'll see 3 purple buildings. That's 3 government buildings. And the government announced that they would redevelop these old government buildings, the immigration building, the law courts, and the revenue tower, which was basically 3 buildings built in the 80s, which in Hong Kong, that's a really old building that was built in 1980. And it was time for them to go. It was no longer serving its purpose, and the government were building new office buildings elsewhere in Hong Kong. And the idea was they'd put these up for auction to major developers and take in a lot of revenue for Hong Kong government to spend on future development. Of course, just going back to that, we saw an opportunity. So as a bunch of architects and planners, we're working with a few group of friendly consultants like Bureau Happold and others. We thought there must be an opportunity to do something else other than build 3 new towers.
There must be some benefit.
Something that would connect Wan Chai back to the waterfront. So we go to the next one. So here we can see where the 3 buildings were, and then you can see the waterfront. And the major thing in the middle there is the Hong Kong Exhibition Centre. For those of you who've been in Hong Kong, you'll probably have seen it and remember it. And that was to be extended forward towards Wan Chai, old Wan Chai, and we'd redevelop. The new developer, when he came in and paid his land premium, would redevelop the site. We felt this is not the right thing to do. This was an opportunity to connect old Wan Chai back again, and then instead of having the highway, we thought we'd build a deck over the highway, and Bureau Happold helped us on this, on the engineering side of it, the feasibility, and we would put a park on top of it. So this has been happening in New York with the High Line, converting old railway lines into parks. This happens in Boston, where we've got where they've moved the highway underground, and in this case, we're moving a highway out of the way and putting a roof above it and putting a park above the highway. And that's the whole idea of Wan Chai Connect. And this is connected with footbridges and everyone can get out of old Wan Chai over to the waterfront, walk along the harbourfront parks. Plus, we have a 10-hectare site above the highway, which becomes a linear park above the existing highway. And I think, as you know, in Hong Kong and in China at the moment, we're up to about 70% electric vehicles already, with 30% petrol cars. And now the future is it's over for petrol cars, and it's in Asia at the moment. Liam, do you want to move on? You want to talk to?
Yeah, I mean, this basically shows you the kind of extent of the park. It kind of shows you that these kind of fingers will continue back down into the more bustling parts of old Wan Chai, cross over the big highway of Gloucester Road and provide this park, and then join up underneath the new extension to the exhibition centre, and then go out onto the new parks that have been created on the waterfront. Yeah. So that kind of basically is it. I mean, it's a large scale urban intervention. There's a lot of them starting to happen in Hong Kong, and we're trying to grab the attention of the Hong Kong government.
So the Hong Kong government, we've actually been presenting this to district council members in Wan Chai, and they're all sort of desperately keen to have it. But it's obviously something that we bring into the development program of the government. So when we redevelop these 3 towers, which is still about to happen, we can actually encourage the developers either to build the park for us, or the government puts back the land premium into the development of this parkland and allow Wan Chai to connect to the waterfront once again for this incredible above ground park. And we have an amphitheatre there. This is the exhibition centre, you can see. So we designed this pro bono with our colleagues in Bureau Happold, and we have brought in KPMG accountants on the financial side to look at the feasibility of this. And the feasibility stands out absolutely there. It only needs the initiative for the government to say, okay, let's do it. And financially, this is all possible. Do you want to move on to the next slide? So this would bring an incredible opportunity. Liam, do you want to go?
I mean, the fact is that Wanchai is a very dense area and it's an old area, and there's people that generations have lived in there, and it has no real public civic space, no public spaces at all to speak of. You know, in other areas in Hong Kong Island, there are big public spaces.
It used to have a waterfront.
And it used to have a waterfront, and it will, with this, it can have a waterfront again. And that's, I think. And then this, basically, this tells the story of it connecting from old to new, and also the fact that it's basically 4% of the total budget of the redeveloping these towers and exhibition centre will give Hong Kong a new urban space.
So the total development area of the new development is actually, we'll put it in one super tower, which gives different parts of Hong Kong have got a landmark tower. And we put a 100-story landmark tower into this design. And that together with a new venue area for the convention centre, because the music industry these days is looking for music venues in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong now is attracting a lot of tourism from China. And this is really an opportunity to bring China into Hong Kong in real terms and bring Wanchai back into the waterfront where it should be. And that's the whole story here. And if we go to the little diagram, you can see on the right-hand side, you'll see a little blue line and an orange line. The blue line is the cost of the development, the investment for the three-tower redevelopment, GFA. The orange part is a little bit of infrastructure cost, and the little part there, there's a 5% of the total development budget required, which is all it would take to build this overhead park. 5% of the total cost of this redevelopment. So really, I know it's big money in global terms, but it's small money in terms of the total cost of this redevelopment, which will happen in the next, commence in the next 4 or 5 years. And this is the idea that we're pushing towards a new opportunity for Hong Kong in Wanchai. And that really concludes our presentation. There's a lot more to the presentation, which you may be able to read in the document we sent through. But there's so much to talk about. We think that's an abbreviated version, which we hope will generate some good questions from you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. What an interesting presentation. It's now, the judges are going to join us on stage, and they're going to ask you 3 questions. Well, hopefully they'll ask a question each. So we've got judges' questions. I'm going to come to Daisy first, and then I'll come to Michaela and then James, if that's all right. So we've got 10 minutes now to ask questions. So I'll come to each of you in turn, and then if there's time at the end, we've still got a bit of time, we can come back again. So Daisy, do you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me, Leah? Yes.
I can hear you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, and what a fantastic opportunity to make change in Hong Kong, which is so built up. I know Hong Kong a little bit, so I can just imagine the change there. I just had a question. It was really interesting to hear about the governance and how, some of your thinking around the collaborations that would be required to happen to make a project of this scale and ambition happen. Be good to understand some of the work around your engagement, how you've brought in districts and communities. How have you approached the top down and bottom up, and what are some of the concerns that you had, and how have you approached addressing them? Be interested to hear a little bit more about your engagement around this huge project.
Okay. Well, that's a really good question. Obviously, the main party that we're dealing with here is the residents of Wanchai district. It's a very famous old historic district in Hong Kong, and for any of you who have traveled here at any time, I'm sure you will know it well. And it's a very old community. the age groups, you know, from very young to very old, people still exercising and walking and trying to enjoy the latter years of their life. And very much the interest here was to get to the district council. Each area of Hong Kong has a district council that actually runs the initiative and communicates with the government. There's been some political issues over it in recent times, but that's resolved now. And these district councils represent the people. So we have gone and spoken to the district council of Wan Chai and asked their advice and their views on what we were trying to do. Because they then have to talk to central government. Central government own all the properties, their own government properties, and they're the people who can raise significant revenue through selling land and getting a land premium paid by private developers. So this is really directed at the private developers. So we also produced this to actually talk to the key private developers to show them that they could get their 100% development potential out of this. If they bought this project from the government, there's a government tender. They buy it from the government at the cost of what I can't remember what we were looking at. Liam, was about £100 billion, I think.
Yeah, 80 million.
Around 80 to 100 billion pounds. How could they do this? And we could show them that for their total investment, if there was a little bit more added, they could provide this major contribution to Hong Kong. We spoke to the real estate consultants, and they advised us also that if we created a park instead of an 8-lane highway, the rateable value of the properties on either side of the highway would be doubled, due to the fact that the owners and the users of these buildings would be taking a view onto a park instead of a view onto a highway. So we had Knight Frank, real estate consultants. We brought them on board and engaged them in long discussions, and they're talking to the government again all of the time. So they're basically saying to the government, not only do we get the park, but you'll get an increase in rateable values. So again, to present this scheme, we had to show that it could be done, and it was quite a 2 or 3 year exercise to plan the architecture, plan the buildings, show that the exhibition centre, which is another major player in Hong Kong's revenue and tourism, that we spoke to the operators of the exhibition centre and told them how they could have an open air arena up in the sky above the highway. And
Liam, I'm going to just cut in there so that other people have a chance to ask questions, because we'll run out of time. So that's all right. Is that all right? Sorry, Daisy. Michaela, do you have a question now that you'd like to put?
Yeah, thanks so much. That was really interesting, and I can see the huge value that sort of green space would present to the community. What I was wondering is, as well as that kind of amenity and well-being, are there any practical transport implications in relation to that connection? Like, is there provision for micromobility or bikes, and would it be possible to alleviate some of the other kind of vehicular pressures within that area?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes, of course, the whole idea would be that the whole thing would be you could be able to cycle, create cycle paths. And we've got our 5-minute walking from the harbour to the from Old Wan Chai. So all these sort of things are in there. There's also the point as pedestrians is that to get to the waterfront, or if you're a visitor going to the exhibition centre, is that all the major kind of infrastructure in terms of transport is back in Old Wan Chai. The old tram line, which runs, which was on the original waterfront in the 1900s, that is back in Old Wan Chai. The MTR, Hong Kong's underground system, is back again south of the line of the big highway. So this thing is very important in bringing people, together. Walking. Yes.
It's a 5-minute walk from the park to anywhere that you can see in that image, to the waterfront and back. So we're also a consultant who is interested in walkability, cyclability. So on the deck itself, we can cycle and we can walk. Unfortunately, Hong Kong at ground level is virtually impossible to cycle and walk around, and it would be a major problem to try
Without being
to
very
solve
dangerous.
that. But we've got them about, we can bring the people up and they walk at the high level.
And Hong Kong works at a high level anyway. There's a whole system of kind of walkways, some of which are air conditioned. You can walk considerable distance without actually going outside and so on. So it's not unusual.
But we're actually trying to make it happen. It's a way to get people to be able to walk. Right now, you cannot walk to the waterfront from Old Wan Chai. There's a 5-meter bridge that crosses that highway. And if you try to walk across that bridge,
You have to be
you're
very
literally very determined to get across it. This whole thing changes the whole idea of Wan Chai. People who go to North Wan Chai for hotels over there never go back to Wan Chai for dinner in the evening. They go to Central. It's easier to take the taxi to Central than it is to go to Wan Chai.
Yeah.
This changes that. It keeps the commercial centre in Wan Chai.
Brilliant. Thank you. James, I'm going to come to you. Do you have a question?
I do. Well, Michaela took my first question, which is absolutely fine. I was really interested that you're finding ways to put a kind of financial value on the social impact of your design. And I was wondering if this is something that's commonplace in Hong Kong, or if you're finding that you're kind of trailblazing there and therefore having to make a case and persuade people to think of that value.
I think that's. I mean, I've both Liam and I have been in Hong Kong for decades, and we understand the commercial developers in Hong Kong really are looking at dollars and cents and square meter areas. And as architects working here, we've been battered over the head consistently for not giving maximum development potential. So we had to really consider that. So that we did engage. We do have to sort of educate the developer that he could do something better. Some of the developers are already doing that. Some of the big guys, I won't mention their names, but they are actually trying to bring landscape spaces. They're building the footbridges. They're trying to add parkland, but they're doing that to bring people into their buildings to sell more of what it is they sell. But we're doing it the other way around. We're actually trying to encourage them to invest money into the public realm. It can either be done, it'll be done jointly with the government. So again, it's something that it gets inbred in Hong Kong that to get things to happen, you really have to lobby it extremely hard and lobby the government, to actually also to do it, because they're also reluctant to spend money on what they find is not going to bring money back to them. It's a different world completely to the UK or other countries in Europe. Even in Japan, they're much more conscious of doing these things, and you can see it happening.
Yeah. It's got to be said.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh,
That's great. Thank you very much, James and Liam. We're going to have to say goodbye now. Thank you very much for your presentation and your thoughtful answers and all our judges' questions. We're going to have to move on to our next project.
Come and see us in Hong Kong. We're talking top team.
Brilliant, yeah. Okay. Right, our next presentation is Jabal Tabir, Makkah, Saudi Arabia, for Kadana with Gillespie's, PUD Consultants, Systematica and Studio 4215. And it's presented to us today by Alp Adel, who is an associate landscape architect, and Michael Devet, who's a partner at Gillespie's. So you have got 10 minutes to present your fabulous project to us.
Great. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, brilliant. So thanks. First of all, thank you for shortlisting our project. This is called Jabal Tabir in Mecca. Jabal means mountain in Arabic. So it's a it's shortlisted for International Future Place, and this project is basically reimagines this sacred mountain within Mecca. So in the next slide, we are looking at the location. So I think passed a bit fast. Right, the place is in Mecca. It's central Saudi Arabia. It's a holy city for Muslims, as you might know of, and then this city is visited by millions of pilgrims all around every year for Hajj pilgrimage. It's a very historic town, and it's shaped by the mountains, as you can see, and the city itself sits in between the mountains, and when pilgrims visit, they fulfill their rituals between the Kaaba, this location, and Mount Arafat, and they go up and down, and they stay here 8 to 7 days to fulfill their rituals. They walk along the pilgrimage route, and our site sits just right in the middle of this rituals within the Mina tent city, where all the pilgrims stay for a couple of days for pause moment, and they do their purification, they do their sacrification, and stay here. But there are some challenges to the site. This is given by our client. It's at the moment it's quite overcrowded because of the tents. There's a lack of organization. That there's no public space for pilgrims whilst they're staying in this tent city. One of the major rituals Muslims do is just throw stones to devil. It's called the Jamarat. It's a 3-story building where they throw stones to pillars. So our site just sits behind of this major event. And of course, there's a lack of clear entry to the site, and due to the location of the mountains, there are lots of illegal pilgrims coming towards the Jamarat and Mina tent city. So they're looking forward to define the space as a public park, so that they're just envisaged to prevent this illegal access points. And of course, the safety risks, because whilst during the ritual, pilgrims climb up the mountain, try to cool off during nighttime, but a client team wants to define and uplift the look and feel of the Mecca. And what we bring is the big move, is the so with careful consideration with the client side, this is the actual boundary of the big master plan, but we focused on the 250 square meters of the site to create an urban park, just above looking towards the tent city. And this urban park sits within 250,000 square meters, and almost half of it will be utilized with the built area, with providing a lot of green space. And you can see the close proximity to Kaaba as well for this site. And then the aim is to accommodate 50 to 60,000 pilgrims during Hajj time. But of course, it's going to operate 12 months, and it's going to be a urban park for the whole Mecca. And then, of course, we had challenges due to the level changes, because it was sitting just 60 to 70 meters up on the hill. And then we needed to find solutions to make it's more accessible for pilgrims and visitors. So we are proposing funicular systems and escalators, as I'm going to show you shortly. So here you can see how the park sits on top of the mountain. We used topography as a opportunity, and then used it as we work with the mountain basically, and it just sits on the topography. And there's a clear hierarchy of terraces, as you can see, as we move from the lower levels towards up. There's a clear hierarchy where how pilgrims are going to use the space. And then there will be distributed of programs looking at the thermal comfort levels and the accessibility points. We carefully located the activations. And of course, we integrated funicular system and escalators from lower levels. This is the Jamarat, where it's a bigger building here. And then where we can reach towards the park through funicular system or through ramp or escalators towards here. And our ambition is quite simple. It's projects about all honoring the ritual and whilst embracing the future of the Mecca. And in here you can see we provide a generous space for pilgrims to sit and relax after fulfill their rituals with dignity. So just to dignify their journeys and transform their 7 to 8 days ritual into a civic and spiritual place during their Hajj time. But off season, it can also operate for people to come here and relax and enjoy the view of Mecca itself. Here you can see the shade structures. They're like opening and closing, turning into lighting features at night time, and then it opens up and turns into a shade structure during daytime to come over harsh conditions of Mecca. And then this is the master plan. We are looking how it sits within the terrain. This is the Jamarat and the tent city, the part of the tent city that you can see here, and it sits above 60 to 70 meters up on the hill. And then we are accessing the park via funicular system or escalators or via ramp. The first terrace is the gateway terrace, we call, where we collect all crowd movement to this terrace. We are also proposing visitor centers in here. And then either end of the park, we are proposing a ramp accesses, and there will be pedestrian ramp accesses through each terrace as well. We carefully located the food and beverage terraces due to the solar analysis. We looked at the solar analysis, and the shaded areas are more comfortable for people to sit and eat. And then we carefully located the praying terraces looking towards the Kaaba to fulfill their worshipping whilst they're doing their Hajj journey. The concept idea was coming from the number 7. We found a series of references within Quran and within the place. So they're turning around Kaaba 7 times, Muslims. They throw 7 stones to the pillars of the devil, for the devil, and then God created the world in 7 days. So there's a 7 number is quite significant within this story. So we thought that creating these 7 moments of reflection and renewal will help us also create 7 landscape characters to define the landscape characters of this park, starting from the pilgrim's gateway, the terraces of unity of worship where people can sit and relax, the pathways, viewpoints looking towards the Mount Arafat and Kaaba itself. There will be opportunities for art features, pillars of wisdom, and cool spots where pilgrims and visitors can relax, sit in the cave and found their prayer moments, and gardens of tranquility, also places for people to sit and pause and just pray in certain moments. So these are the moments within the park we looked at. Yeah.
You're coming to a close quite soon? Or?
Sure.
Thank
and
you.
Then these are the images that you can see the landscape character areas. So here you can see the Ramadan market where we have more activation on the left-hand side. And as you can see on the right-hand side, there is a more cooling and sustenance moments where people find a little bit more tranquility looking for worshipping moments.
Fabulous.
And then the impact, when it comes to impact, this is not just a park. I think it's both human and operational, enables safer crowd and flow, and also it offers shaded and cool spaces. And we have proposed landscape-led environmental strategies just to propose this park. And then this is through this approach, I think Jabal Tabir becomes more than infrastructure. It's a civic and spiritual landmark. Just sits above the MENA 10 city, and then defined not by stress and congestion, but it's defined by care, clarity, and meaning. And then finally, why this project works. It shows an extreme, it stands in the extreme climate conditions, pilgrimage landscape. We show that it can be really safe, calm, and humane. And it brings faith, safety, ecology, and urban life. And it transforms the whole look and feel of Mecca.
Thank you very much. What a project that has potential for real impact. I'm going to bring the judges back to the stage now, and they're going to ask you some questions. I will come to Michaela first. You can take it in turns so that you each get a good go, and then I'll then James and then Daisy. So Michaela, do you have a question for our fabulous presenters?
Yeah, thank you so much. I've learned so much from this project. I think it's really interesting, and there's lots of different aspects to the build. What I am quite keen to understand is, whilst there's, there's so many positives, it's still a very big, serious engineering project, and within a fairly sensitive environment on a mountaintop, which has an existing ecosystem. And obviously you've got planting planned and trees and everything, but how have you gone about integrating the existing ecosystem with this big engineering project, and then the continued planting, so that it all kind of works together, as opposed to just being something that's plonked on top of the mountain, as it were?
Yeah. The existing terrain itself, at the moment there are no trees here, and we are aware of that. We build this park, we need to carve into the mountain. But during the CMP stage, we come up with some strategies, which was modular approach, just to make it more sustainable in terms of construction, and of course at the same time it's going to be more cost effective. So we brought this modular system idea where we can bring the modular walls, retaining walls, to the site. At the same time, it can be more sustainable when it comes to modular urban furniture as well. And then
maybe if I could quickly answer as well.
Yeah.
So just to I think get to the crux of the query, I think number one, the site is unfortunately quite badly scarred already. There's some significant cutting on the side of the mountain to originally accommodate some of the apartment towers you see in some of those views, unfortunately. So it was a portion. We did an exercise to map 3 possible sites. And as a group, a client group and a consultant group, we landed on this area because it unfortunately had a previous skirmish to it, unfortunately. So it was the lesser of the other sites that we had investigated. I think what Alp was touching on in terms of the modularity is actually a light touch approach. So we were trying to avoid highly mechanized, disruptive construction methodology at the site, and hence why we're touching on the idea of modularity and using as much of the geology, bearing in mind its concept. So we hadn't done deep geotechnical investigations yet, but we had to assume certain things at that time and adopted a sort of lighter touch construction methodology.
Brilliant. Thank you. James, let's come to you.
Sure. Thank you, guys. It's a fascinating project. It's a consultation question, I guess, but I'm just wondering how you ensure that your design reflects the kind of rituals and practices that the visitors to the site will be carrying out. I'm just wondering if you could expand on that process a little bit.
Do you want to explain a little bit about how people use the site at the moment, El? Because I think that maybe lends a little bit insight on how we're adapting the project to meet the needs of the brief.
Sure. So at the moment, as you might have seen in the pictures, there's a massive ocean of tents, and during the Hajj time, some of the tent area sits outside of this Mina boundary, which is kind of a religious boundary due to unplanned organization. So the tents outside of Mina, people needs to stay at least one night within the Mina boundaries. So this park will allow those pilgrims to stay and fulfill their worshipping.
But I think the point being is that during the Hajj and Umrah season, that entire mountain is occupied by about 10,000 people. There's uncontrolled access onto the mountain because everyone goes and collects stones to participate in the Jumeirah ritual. Okay, and unfortunately, there's probably been quite a lot of ecological damage because year on year, about 10,000 people actually occupy and not just this particular Jabal Tabir, it's along the entire ridge from Mina all the way up to this area. And it's just part of the ritual. It's just that as people have got means to visit Saudi Arabia over the last 10 to 20 years, the size of the ritual has just grown exponentially, and it's actually become unsustainable. And this is why they're actually trying to manage access to this mountain, but others as well, along the pilgrimage route, and it will be controlled. So I can't remember the numbers, Elk, but they're going to have to reduce quite significantly onto these sort of isolated portions of the mountains, allowing people to still participate in the way they would normally, but it's going to be in a slightly more controlled manner because now it's actually just unsafe. It's really, really quite a health and safety hazard at the moment. So I guess we're trying to provide an amenity, an open space asset for the pilgrimage time, but then also beyond the pilgrimage season. The Royal Commission for Makkah City, who are ultimately the custodians on all these projects in Makkah, they really wanted a long-term, year-round asset. And so it's not embedded in this presentation, but we had a number of seasonal overlays that we presented to the client group on how they might be able to use the space, and actually also sort of shut down certain terraces because during off-season, the amount or carrying capacity wouldn't need to be that high, obviously, for these terraces. So we had an adaptability and sort of flexibility in the design to contort and stretch according to the needs of the seasons throughout the year.
Thank you very much. Daisy, I'll come to you now, please.
Thanks, Leah. Thank you for that presentation. It's obvious there's so much thought that's gone into this, and I love the people-led aspect of all of this. Very quickly, I'm conscious of time. I've got a couple of questions, but for me, it's very hard for a project of this nature, looking ahead to the next, however many, 50, 100 years. How do you define success? Where do you start putting your success metrics in? I suppose building a little bit on Michaela's question on planting. What would you define as success for this project?
So I think first of all, we had a few KPIs that we had to meet. It was part of the brief in terms of the carrying capacity, crowd management, mobility, so how do people access the site? I think the true test of this particular project is managing people at the end of the day in a very safe environment. It's also ensuring that we're improving on the current ecological baseline, which I'm pretty confident, although we don't have empirical data because we didn't reach the BNG stage of the project, the biodiversity net gains, I'm pretty confident that we would be exceeding the baseline at site. I think looking ahead, you know, you're talking about a 20, 50, 100-year projection. This is their pilot project. So further along the actual ridgeline, they want to expand this, and it's part of a wider master plan with a couple of other quite world-renowned architectural companies, and we're sort of leading the charge on it. So they've sort of put the cart before the horse to ensure that we get the principles correct on this project in order to then sort of roll out a larger phased element of the project across the ridgeline. I think it's only when you speak with a client like this, because we were heavily reliant on them as a client group to advise us. You know, we're outsiders to a large degree to a project like this, and we're wholly reliant on local guidance. And I think at the end of the process, they were really proud of what we had as a group achieved. And I believe that they're looking now at the following phases.
Great. That is about all we've got time for on this project. So thank you very much, Michael and Alp, for presenting such an amazing project. We're going to come on to our next one now.
Thank you.
Let me find what we've got here. So our next project is Nairobi Central Station in Nairobi, Kenya, for the Kenya Railway Company with Atkins Realis, Howard Humphreys and Mace. And we've got Neil Manthorpe, Associate Director of Landscape and Urban Design, and Jess Monteith, who's a regeneration architect, and both from Atkins Realis. You've got 10 minutes, Neil and Jess, and then we'll bring our judges on stage to ask you some questions. Off you go.
That's great, thank you. Can you hear us okay, Leah? Can you hear us okay on the screen? Yep, brilliant. Right, hello and thank you. Thanks for inviting us along to present Nairobi Central. It's a project about connecting people in the heart of Nairobi. I'm Neil Manthorpe from Atkins Realis and lead our places team. I'm joined by Jess Monteith, who was our regeneration architect. We're supported by a talented multidisciplinary team, including Howard Humphreys and Mace, that are both based in Nairobi. So our story begins looking at the founding of Nairobi as a rail depot back in 1899. It's now the capital of Kenya, with ambitions to establish and promote that role further for East Africa. The city is strategically positioned on the rail connection between Uganda and the postal port of Mombasa. It's located at a higher altitude and has a subtropical climate, and is fondly known as the Green City in the sun. There's quite a young demographic and a rapidly growing population of over 6 million people, making it one of the world's fastest growing cities. It's also the only city in the world to host a national park. And this was very much the inspiration for our vision, the wildlife and the nature, and by referencing Kenyan culture, the vibrancy of the city and its heritage, we based the ethos of Nairobi Central around the concept of a traditional boma. So you can see some pictures of that along the bottom, a place where people and communities come together. And that's very much where we started, bringing people together to listen and understand community needs. Supported by Howard Humphreys and the Neapolitans, we drew together a diverse cross-section of the city, from market traders to ex-mayors. We had young families, there's older generations, and we engaged with people living and working in the city to understand what really mattered to them. The Go Down Arts Centre, a community-driven startup, shared their analysis on making Nairobi safer for women and girls, and their initiatives for improved accessibility and connectivity across the city. Both of these were used to inform our wider strategies. The thing from the consultations that we quickly recognised was the pride in place for Kenyan culture, heritage and its wildlife, but also many of the challenges that they're facing regarding access, safety, well-being, and also employment. And that brings us on to some of the urban challenges. As a developing country with more limited investment opportunities, it was evident that Nairobi faces some real challenges in this area. There's high volumes of pedestrian and vehicular traffic. There's limited public transport options. You get these really severe flash floods in the wet season, and then transversely restrictions to water access in the dry seasons, to the extent that people are having to turn their taps off in their homes. There's a lack of free access to public and amenity space. So some of these requiring payment, most of these requiring some form of identification or a security check to get in. And there's also wider public safety and security issues. So thinking through these urban challenges really helped us to shape our thinking on the emergence of our initial master plan. So our site, highlighted here in red, Nairobi Central, sits at the heart of the city, directly adjacent to the structured CBD in blue and the bustling Eastern District across on the right in the beige. It adjoins the heavily trafficked Haile Selassie Avenue that's running east to west across the city, and connects with Moi Avenue that's leading away to the north. The train line on the southern side of the station, also running east to west, currently severs that residential communities to the south with only one narrow pedestrian bridge, providing that connection up into the CBD. The existing 5-hectare station site currently serves the existing railway. There's many unlicensed storage for matatus, there's coach parking, and there's areas of warehouse storage. Our master plan delivers on the concept of the Boma, to bring people and community together. The iconic form of the station provides a world-class interchange and catalyst for the regeneration within Nairobi Central. The station itself facilitates 30,000 passengers an hour at peak times. It connects the CBD with the suburbs of Nairobi and nationally. There's 4 new bridges connecting between the north and south sides of the city. There's also an improved network of walking and cycling connections that have been created. There's new direct routes and safer crossings across Haile Selassie. There's lighting and wayfinding strategies introduced, new promenades, walks, connections, tying into the existing urban fabric of the city. Running alongside that, there's a network of key public places that have been introduced. You've got the Boma Sponge Park there at the centre of the image. You've got some urban spaces like the Exchange Square, Station Plaza, and the Railway Square, providing open-to-all civic spaces inspired by heritage. We've also looked to retrofit many of the existing heritage buildings. So you've got Uganda House, the Coach House, and to the rear, to the right, the 1899 station building, all repurposed for retail, F&B, and community use. There is the new bus rapid transit station, you can just see to the right of the image, that's been introduced to connect regionally across central Nairobi and the suburbs. There's also wider commercial and residential developments that are occurring both to the east and the west of this main image. Across to you, Jess.
Thank you. Thanks, Neil. Okay, so beyond the master plan, our strategy was about creating a sense of place with a strong identity. By activating and blurring edges and boundaries, we strove to create pockets where people would want to be. We listened to the local community groups that Neil was mentioning earlier to draw inspiration from Nairobi's culture and heritage to activate the urban life on the site. This image here pictures Exchange Square, which is outside the historic asset of Uganda House. And as you can see here, we're picturing a bustling kind of retail F&B area. And our goal was to set out a clear vision for each of the different character areas across the Nairobi Central site. So here are some more examples of those. We have an open and inviting station with a semicircular canopy extending out across the public realm and welcoming people in from any direction. We have enhancements to biodiversity and an open and accessible public park. We also have the large civic areas like Railway Square for events, ceremonies, markets, and urban life. Across the site, we identified a number of places that really needed activation. Our approach brought in art, play, sports, and culture to create activity and give people reasons to want to stay here. Alongside this, we focused heavily on safety, practicality, and access. So widening pedestrian routes, improving lighting, and strengthening wayfinding so the whole place becomes easier, more intuitive, and comfortable to use. All of this ties together with the fully integrated public transport interchange, which Neil mentioned earlier, which strengthens the citywide connectivity, bringing people to and from our site with ease. And importantly, the area also has the potential to deliver more than 10,000 new homes right in the heart of Nairobi. So economically, the benefits are significant. There's up to 120,000 new jobs across the city, over 1 million square meters of commercial space, and the ability to spark regeneration across 170 hectares in Nairobi. But most importantly, it lifts the regional and national connectivity for businesses and employees, securing Nairobi's place on an international scale. We also looked closely at the environmental performance. The landscape strategy boosts biodiversity, including more than 40 different tree species, each one to represent a different tribe that comprises Kenya's culture. By doing this, we are creating far better microclimates, delivering on urban cooling across central Nairobi through shade, planting, and shelter. And there's a sustainable building strategy that underpins this development. We've used and embraced the idea of seasonal change as inspiration for color, texture, materials, and identity. This helps the project feel authentically Kenyan while responding to the environmental needs. We can't talk about the environmental demands without talking about water management, because environmentally, this is a critical part of the scheme. The city faces both drought and periods of extreme flooding, so we designed a system that tackles both of these challenges. Across the whole area, we've increased water collection and storage. Rainfall is collected from rooftops, as you can see from the semicircular rippled boma. It's attenuated and stored in 15,000 cubic meters of tanks below the site. That water is then processed and reused for gray water and for irrigating the park during the dry season, creating a self-sustaining park. At ground level, the network of swales and the sunken sponge park help manage excess water during the flood periods and protect the site from the 1 in 100 flood events. The result is a landscape that works and embraces Nairobi's climate rather than fights against it.
Thanks, Jess. And then really just to conclude, just wanted to reiterate that point that this project is beyond statistical improvement. It's about building wider connections nationally, regionally, between the people living and working in Nairobi. It's a scheme that is backed by the Kenyan government, Kenyan Railway Company, supported by the UK, and it has an opportunity to make a real tangible difference to everyday lives. It's about the people and communities of Nairobi coming together, the benefit that this project can bring to their health and well-being. A place to be proud of, the front door to Nairobi, that connects not just the city, but also its people. Thank you very much for listening, and we'd welcome any questions.
Great, thank you very much. That is a fascinating stage now. And I will invite them to ask questions. So we've got, are they all back now? Yeah. So James, you're going to go first this time.
Okay.
And then Daisy, and then Michaela. That's the right order.
Hi, Neil and Jess. Thank you for that presentation. It's really interesting. I just had a question about, it was interesting how you were consulting with arts organizations from the beginning. And I was wondering if it was planned for there to be a home for organizations like the Go Down Arts Centre within your plan, or are they? Yes, tell me more about that.
Completely, and I think one of the really interesting things from those earlier sessions, it was a quote a lady gave us, is about providing them with almost like a blank canvas, a canvas for the city where everyday life and activation can play out. And I think the art strategy and engaging with organisations like the Go Down Arts Centre is, a really important part of that as we move into the next design stage, to create meaningful art, meaningful places. So we've created the framework, we've created the canvas, and that very much is the intention to bring organisations like the Go Down Arts Centre on board to create those meaningful strategies.
We have identified one of the historic assets as well, the Uganda House, one of the existing buildings on site. The plan is to retain that and turn it into an arts facility. So, you know, showcasing art, hosting art, live art on it. That was kind of the conversation we had with the Go Down Arts Centre, and throughout our project, that area was identified as a place that could house this kind of creative urge that's in the city.
Thank you.
Great. Daisy, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much for that presentation. Very comprehensive, and you can see how complex and complicated the project is and how well you've thought across the piece. I'm really interested, again, picking up on James's point on your consultation. I love that you started with engagement. You mentioned women and girls safety there. And it'd be good to just maybe unpick a little bit more, especially given the context of public transport and that this is essentially a transport hub. Your thinking around women and girls safety and within that context of transport?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of sort of safety protocols that we took into consideration when designing. So, you know, we have vehicle kind of bollards around the whole site. Was a bomb blast analysis for the station. I think when we were talking to the groups in Nairobi, it was about lighting, it was about wayfinding, it was about spaces where you can get clear sight lines through things. So that informed a lot of our public realm, ensuring that we have very generous proportions that anybody would feel safe walking through. To kind of create a democratic space for everyone. We have a play area and a sports area that would be open for all kids, girls as well. And so that was kind of our approach to keeping it safe and secure.
I was just going to add, one of the feedback that we received was around the Aga Khan walk that leads just to the north of our site into the CBD. And that was cited as an excellent example. They have street markets along there. There's a lot of active frontage. So what we try to replicate, and I'm not sure if this, I don't think our image is still on the screen now, but it's the People's Walk and introducing points of activation along that, alongside more traditional things like the lighting as well. So yeah, it was a core part of the considerations that we worked through.
Thank you.
Great. Michaela, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a really beautiful project that's been really well thought out. And, you know, we often talk about mobility hubs. And it's like the most fantastic mobility hub because you've got all sorts of mobility happening there. Having worked in a local authority, I understand how fantastic and exciting it is when these new projects start to come off the ground and be designed. But I also understand the challenges of like maintaining and making sure that they're able to deliver not just initially or for a couple of years, but that they constantly are there to sort of serve the community. And I know you've put so much thought into this, but I was just wondering if you have considered easy planting or long-term maintenance within the city, and how the local authority can reduce the long-term cost, because sometimes that's what kind of is difficult to get funding for. And the other thing I'm quite interested in is the connection to public transport. So obviously you've got the train station, but I was brought up in South Africa and there's not a fantastic general public transport network. So is there a connection to like a informal public transport, or yeah?
So if I make a start in it and talk about the funding related to the place, and I think Jess, you could probably pick up on a few bits specifically related to the station as well. Some of the things that you're completely right, a project of this scale and ambition, you've got to think about it long term. And there's a few ways that we have worked some of that thinking into our proposal. So we, of course, consulted with the local authorities in Nairobi. But in terms of thinking about the maintenance, we've sort of mentioned the storage tanks, storage facilities, the swales, that would manage and take care of the vast majority of the irrigation requirements for the entirety of this site. What we've also brought in is the opportunity for private development and ownership of adjoining properties, and the management and maintenance of some of the spaces in and around those. So I suppose releasing some of that financial burdens on the management and maintenance to the local authority. And I think with the lighting within the public realm, we'd look to integrate and incorporate in some of the roof structures, solar panels. And I know specifically on the station, there's a little bit more that we could go into on detail around that.
Yeah, in terms of just connecting into the infrastructure that exists in Nairobi for transportation, we were really lucky to get to go there and spend time there. And it's a very kind of chaotic system for someone who's used to the tube in London, let's say. Matatus are everywhere. It's very informal. But what's great is the city already has started building this bus transit system. So it's already being built on site. So we're connecting into this, and this is supposed to be, it's a very strong gesture from the city that they want to have something more reliable and better integrated. So we're connecting in with that system. The Mutatu system will still be present nearby on site. We don't have an interest in completely erasing it. It's a very Kenyan culture pillar. So it would be more making sure that Mutatus have specific areas near the site, which has been discussed with the client to relocate them appropriately. There's also taxi drop-offs and VIP drop-offs near the station on the east and west side. So we're kind of, keeping that in mind as well. Yeah.
And I think I just finished with underpinning a lot of this that relates to several of your points is there's a whole sustainability strategy. So that looks at the energy efficiency of the buildings. So they're more energy efficient. I think it's something like 40% more energy efficient. And there is a whole piece around the integration of the public transport. And you're right, this is a real transport hub, an interchange between the bus rapid system, the rail, but also the informal matatus and taxis that connect across the city. And of course, I think for me, the big thing is making this more accessible to people in their everyday lives. The walking routes, the new bridges, those connections are for me probably as important as the wider connectivity this offers.
Thank you very much, Neil and Jess. That's a very fascinating project. That concludes the first half of our judging. So we're going to take a short break now. We'll be back with the second half in just about 10 minutes time, and we're going to show you 3 more contenders for the Pineapples for International Future Place. So I'm going to see you back here in 10 minutes. Go and grab a cup of tea, quick comfort break, and thank you for watching the Pineapples. Hello and welcome back to the Festival of Pineapples. This is the live judging of the Pineapples Awards for Place. My name is Leah Stewart. I'm a director at Civic with a background in transport planning and street design, and I am your chair for this category. This session is the second half of the judging of the category for International Future Place for the Pineapples Award for Place. This category seeks to recognise a well-designed future place anywhere in the world outside the UK that seeks to foster community, welcome visitors and attract tenants, contribute to urban life and encourage people to dwell, live, work, connect, learn or play. Now we have 3 more great finalists to share with you. We've had 3 already in an earlier session and we're back for 3 more. A reminder of the rules. Each presenter has 10 minutes to pitch to the judges, who then have 10 minutes to ask questions. After hearing all the presentations, the judges will deliberate in private to decide the winner. Who will win the Golden Pineapple? Well, that will be announced at an awards party on the 22nd of April at Trinity Buoy Wharf in London. It's an absolutely amazing evening. Tickets to the party are on sale now at thepineapples.co.uk, so get yours while you can. A selection of the finalists will also be invited to present their project live on stage at this summer's Festival of Place on the 10th of June at Box Park, Wembley, London. Again, another fantastic event. So I would heartily recommend you joining for that. Feel free to use the emoji button below to cheer on our presenters today, and do share your comments in the chat. However, the judges will be the only ones asking questions. So without further ado, a welcome back to our judges. We have Daisy Narayanan, a Public Realm Director at the Crown Estate. Daisy trained as an architect and urban designer before focusing on sustainable transport and climate action over the past 2 decades. Now at the Crown Estate, she was formerly head of placemaking and mobility at the City of Edinburgh, where she led on delivering a citywide integrated approach to transport and placemaking. Daisy sits on the Board of Architecture and Design Scotland and is a member of NLA High Streets Expert Panel. She's a member of the Evidence Group of Scotland's Climate Assembly and has recently been awarded an MBE for services to inclusive urban planning. She's also been elected to the Fellowship of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. Michaela Jackson is our second judge. She's an assistant transport planner at Ardent Consulting. Over the last 5 years, Michaela has worked in Stirling to support the delivery of their flagship active travel project, Walk, Cycle, Live Stirling. She started with the team leading on community engagement and behaviour change, and is now managing the delivery of active travel projects in Stirling. Michaela is passionate about all forms of sustainable transport, in particular how we use transport and placemaking as a lever to enhance wealth, well-being and connection. And our third judge is James Bowthorpe, who is a company director for ARCS. James has over 20 years experience in the creative and placemaking sectors, working with diverse clients, including the South Bank Centre, Nike Global and the BBC. James has worked extensively in placemaking for clients including the Crown Estate, Eco World London and Related Argent, consulting on strategy and leading the delivery of creative placemaking and leasing projects. He is the founder of Applied Research Creative Studio and Kiosk World. James circumnavigated the world by bicycle in 2009 and made a descent of the Hudson River in a boat made of Manhattan's trash in 2015. So a good, fantastic panel of judges there to look at our international future place. So it's now time to hear from our next project. Just a reminder to our presenters, you've got 10 minutes to pitch your project, and then we'll have a 10-minute Q&A with the judges. So first up is Trollhättan Sticks in Malmö, Sweden, for Skanska Fastigheter Rigs. My Swedish pronunciation isn't very good, so I'll have to ask our presenters to do this. Riksbyggen and Malmö start with Helanders Sjöberg, Forsberg Ling, We Made That, and Ramble. This project is presented by Holly Lewis, who is a partner at We Made That, and Stefan Sjöberg, director at Helanders Sjöberg. Off you go, Holly and Stefan.
Thanks very much, Leah, and great pronunciation. I will probably not do as good a job. So my name is Holly Lewis from We Made That. We've been acting as critical friend to the team led by Hellander Sjöberg and Forsberg Ling for Skanska and Riksbyggen. I'm just going to start with where we are. So as you've said, we're in Malmö in southwest Sweden. Malmö is a small city, but with big ambitions. And it's got a very strong maritime history, which is very important for our site, which is the one that you can see here, just catching the sunlight with the kind of turquoisey, greenish blue frontage. I'm told that I can't point with my cursor, so hopefully you can see that in the middle of the screen, that sort of sits in between the road and the waterfront there. If we go to the next slide, we can see a little bit more about that building. So it's this white concrete frame with the brick panels, and then you can see another sort of brick frame building just poking up at the back. All of that is the Trollhättan 6 site. It's a former harbour building that had direct relationship with the kind of harbour operations of this quayside. And it's interesting, I think this image kind of captures the change that's happening in the area of the site. So in the foreground, all of those red brick buildings, and you can see a sort of dark red stained timber building, in fact, on the very left-hand side there, have related to the harbour operations that are sort of historic for this part of Malmö. But in the back, you can see this creeping change, which is the introduction from a more maritime-based economy to a knowledge-based economy, which is really the transition that Malmö is going through as a whole. So another bluish-green building here is Orkanen, which is a university building, and then the sort of taller building at the back there is an office block with a hotel, a kind of more, I guess, urban character here. So there's this sort of change that's happening on this site and also in Malmö as a whole. We were really keen as we were developing the proposals as a team to understand that bigger context. So these diagrams just try and summarize that. Our site is just to the left-hand side and down a bit of the black dot that's in between the wharf and the harbour on the left-hand diagram there. Again, I can't quite point, but hopefully you can identify that. It's at almost this touching point between the wharf area of Malmö's historic kind of seafront, which was the home of shipbuilding, and the harbour side, which was more to do with trade and kind of coming and going of goods related to the sea. The wharf side is also subject to its own transformation that's ongoing. Proposals for Varvstad in the Wharf City are ongoing and try to reimagine what it is to build on that history without kind of getting rid of it all. I think some of that is also present in the proposals for our site. And what we observed here is that we're switching from this blue workyard, kind of manual labour-based economy, to a blue campus where the nature of the quayside is maybe one that's more to do with leisure, more to do with attracting people in to the city, and as I've said already, a kind of changing set of uses that surround it. It's important to recognise, I think, that our site is just one part of the jigsaw puzzle that's happening in this area of Malmö. We've been asked particularly to talk about the collaboration and that happened during the development of the proposals. And here I think we have to give some credit to the client team at Skanska and Riksbyggen and also Malmö City for pushing for this pretty unusual and quite innovative, I think, process that we all went through. So there was an international competition to design the site. You can just see the site, the kind of white concrete frame and the red brick chimney on the far right-hand side there. 60 entrants expressed interest in that competition, 4 teams were shortlisted, and then there were a series of workshops with those 4 teams just to think about different aspects of the brief, think about sustainability, to think about mix of uses, to think about kind of understanding of the site before we even received the brief, let alone started developing any proposals. And this, I think, is quite unusual. So it was actually a sort of genuinely collaborative spirit because we weren't even preparing anything or presenting, we weren't competing at this point, we were working together to understand the site. And so I think that is quite unusual, and I think that the proposals were enhanced by that. And then this diagram just shows an overview, so you can spot our site there in the green, next to that red bridge that's just joining the 2 sides, the wharf and the harbour side of the quay. The proposals include 10,000 square metres of new office space, about 18 new cooperative housing apartments in residential blocks, new community uses, opportunity for new cultural uses, new public realm and public spaces. And I think it's this combination of different kinds of uses, as well as a really ambitious combination of adaptive reuse and introduction of new floor space with timber framed structures that will deliver that incredible transformation, but that speaks to both the history of Malmö and its future. This diagram, just as it says at the top, reimagined as a hybrid block. So there's a hybridity here of uses, and facing towards the street edge at the top of the screen is refurbished space for kind of office uses, co-working, this kind of thing in that block. So that's refurbished lower floors of the existing office building. Facing onto the quay side are new shops, Lokala, the opportunity for cultural space and community spaces, and then above that, the new residential blocks that are facing onto the waters front. And you can see also that there's opportunity for that public space, both facing onto the quay side, but also within the block. There is an adaptive reuse of that existing car parking structure, opportunity for that to be used by residents, but also by the wider communities of Malmö. And we're really thinking about how they can be invited into the site at this really important point of, you can just see the very left-hand edge of the drawing there, the bridge that joins over to Varvstad. And so this is a place that is currently a car park and some disused office space, becoming really reimagined. I think the important thing just to point out here is that there are some challenges really with reusing that existing car parking structure. It's a pretty everyday structure. It's not listed. It's not necessarily even particularly beautiful, but we see that there's real value in the everyday buildings, that kind of ordinary building. There's value in its embodied carbon, which Stefan will talk about a little bit more in a second, but also significance in terms of its history and its kind of meaning for Malmö. So we need to recognise that some of those things that we're valuing maybe don't have the kind of value where you think, oh, we should take in great care of this structure, but that is what the proposal is seeking to do. And we think that there's sort of benefits in terms of its impact and its character for the city as a virtue of doing that. I think at this point, I'll hand over to Stefan.
Thank you, Holly. I'll try to be a bit brief. So this is an elevation of the southern alley, where we can see that the new proposed buildings is a family of 3 new volumes with new office space and 2 residential volumes. And our approach is really to weave these uses and functions together with existing structure. So it becomes quite a hybrid project in use as well as in architecture. We worked really hard with Ramble and the team to utilize what was there already, to really use the load bearing and the ground foundations of the existing buildings to load lightly and reuse as much as possible as the existing structures on the former sea bottom. Next slide, please. In the competition brief, there was quite aspirational targets for sustainability, social sustainability, as well as carbon. We worked hard again with the LCA during the design phase of the competition to indicate what kind of global warming potential, how we can limit that. So we looked at the stages 1 to 5, and we reached like 128 kilos carbon per square meters for the workspaces and 140 for the residential spaces, which is quite rare and quite low even in Sweden. Next slide, please. So a view of the pedestrian new quay around the basin. So the city will update the public realm, providing this new blue campus with new bridges. Kvarteret Trollhättan plays really a supporting role to activate and support urban life and invite everyone from the whole region of Malmö into this destination. There's collective areas shared by the residents and the people working here, such as the lifted courtyard, which is 1 floor up to enable public users along the quay. And this courtyard gets a frame view through the heritage concrete frame. Next slide, please. So our quest was really to find a Malmö architecture, something that serves Malmö really well, looking at the setting in a harbor and a wharf landscape that is changing, is in a transformative process, how we can find places, collective places as well as individual places, a private realm where you can live even if the surrounding is changing quite rapidly. The neighborhood emerging with the university and workplaces and all these fantastic new uses with food destinations. We tried to find a new vernacular that is part of the place, that is of the place, and also quite site specific with circular principles and details and construction methods that could incorporate both reuse and new materials where needed. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Holly and Stefan. That's a really lovely project. I really like green at the end, it's very nice. I'm going to bring our judges back on stage and they're going to ask you some questions. So we've got 10 minutes of questions and we're going to take Daisy's question first. Fire away, Daisy.
Thank you for that project. How beautiful. It's a lovely site, and obviously there's a huge amount of thinking that's gone in. So thank you for that presentation. I was quite curious to understand a bit more about innovation. You talked about the vernacular, you talked about some of the innovative approaches and partnerships as well. So how have you thought about innovation throughout, right from start to finish through the project?
Shall I start, Holly? Or?
Go for it, yeah, go for it.
All right. I think the hybrid structure, the brief for the competition was calling for a hybrid plot or a hybrid block in. So I think that was quite innovative in itself to combine these uses. But I think if we talk about innovation in the kind of material way and like how you can save or restore or like retain some of a kind of not very loved piece of structure in a way from the 50s, 60s, early 60s, I think we look quite hard at what you can do. So as I said, we researched the qualities of the load-bearing structures, and it's not easy to, of course, to excavate. You need to like put new pilings sometimes for the tall residential tower, for instance. But we knew we had to lean towards light construction materials like timber and timber hybrids to really make a light, to make the product land lightly in terms of kilos on the site. So I think that was innovation that Riksbyggen and Skanska, the clients have maybe not yet built any timber products. We try to find good examples working with Rumble around, like good examples around Sweden and Denmark and beyond to find the best methods.
And I think it's worth, I mean, you touched on the figures for the embodied carbon, Stefan, but that figure of 128 kilos per meter squared, the average in the UK in 2022 was 640 kilos. So I think it just, it's like 26% of the embodied carbon of a standard building. I think that shows some innovation. So even though maybe formally you wouldn't necessarily look at it and go, oh my God, I've never seen anything like it before, that there has been some really detailed thought into how that can be achieved. And I think that innovation, as Stefan has said, of why do we keep this existing concrete frame? What can we make the use of? Like architecturally, it's also quite exciting because we'll end up with these double height spaces in some areas. There will be the kind of the nature of that kind of slightly more raw concrete frame. And this is in a very central location. It's right by Malmö Central Station with the university right there. It's quite a sort of buzzy urban environment where maybe you might assume that projects that reuse some of those kinds of structures, like old parking garages, that they might be sort of on the edge of town maybe, and you do it because you haven't really got enough money. That's not what it is here. It's saying, actually, there's a sort of luxury to that reuse that I would also say is kind of innovative or rarely seen, I would say.
Thank you. Michaela, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, I think it's kind of tied into Daisy's question, actually. I mean, I quite like the symbolism of using an old car park for something else. It's like we're valuing people and we're kind of saying, no cars, you don't need to have the space anymore. But what I'm interested in as well is like, there's been so much innovation in these early stages with the collaboration and the thinking outside the box for like how to get these designs together. But how do you, I don't know what it's like in Sweden, but how do you continue that into the next stage, into the construction stage, when you're looking for contractors to build this that are going to understand the design and be able to source the type of materials and have the same ethos? Because it's going to be very tricky to, I mean, for us, I think it would be quite tricky in this country to get that alignment.
I can start, Holly, maybe, and then you can support me on that one. But we are just in the pre-app process, looking to submit the planning application now before summer in May, and I think that is really the negotiation or discussion, like how you can make this happen. We have transformed an old wharf building just next to the site across the water, and I think it comes down to, I guess, how much you can trust that you can retain things. If there is a will, there is a way, usually. So if you can trust the process, that you don't have all the answers the first day or in the first step of the process, you have to kind of test things like structures further. And usually, I think that drives a lot of innovation. And I think we are risk averse in Sweden as well, but I think I have worked a little bit in the UK, and I think in this context, you can't be as risk driven by limiting risks. You have to trust that we can solve that when we get there. Otherwise, it's really difficult to work with old buildings that you really have no idea if what they contain, or if there's contaminated ground down their parking garage, etc. So I think one answer is that you have to trust, this is the vision, and then you have to trust the process to get there if you have people and clients that are willing to do it.
I think maybe the thing that is just worth pointing out in terms of the contrast between the UK context and the Swedish context, that there's also been this really interesting overlapping of roles in the work stages. So Malmö Stad, the city of Malmö, were involved in the competition selection process all the way through, whereas you wouldn't necessarily expect that that would be happening, which means that they've been involved in that shaping of the brief and in shaping the process, which now that you're going into the equivalent of the planning application, they've seen the scheme, they're really familiar with it. It's almost like a pre-app has happened already. So that has been overlapping. So there's some continuity there where the planning process is trying to uphold some of those standards that were established in the early stages. The other thing to say is that Skanska will build it themselves, that they're not handing it over to other contractors. They actually have in-house that knowledge of what it's going to be like. So again, there's this sort of overlap of the early design stages to what happens later on. That means that there's a bit more continuity. So from a sort of how it would normally happen in the UK perspective, to me, it looks much more secure because you don't have this strange like baton passing moment because the people who were going to be in charge at that later stage were involved in the step before.
That's really interesting to know. Thanks for telling. Yeah.
James, do you want to come in then?
Yes, please. Thank you both. Really interesting presentation. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the intended end users for the different functions within the development. Yeah, that's my question.
Yes, as I said, maybe compared to other projects, it is the residential parts. So this is a collaboration between our two clients that are Skanska, Skanska is developing the commercial parts with the offices and the ground floor users and maybe a restaurant and community places, and Riksbyggen is doing the co-housing component of around 80 apartments, and these will be the plot will be eventually be divided into 3 different pieces of real estate. So there will be one co-housing organization for the lower residential volume and one for the higher, and then there will be like a T-shaped commercial piece of property that can open up towards the waterfront to have more active programs there as well, or users. So in the competition we kind of envision that the parking garage is ideal for both green mobility. We had very little cars, but a lot of bikes and shared mobility devices, as well as we saw that there could be meanwhile uses as well in the future. But I think that was the kind of idea, that we can weave these functions together or uses together, that the courtyard will be beneficial as well for people working, and we didn't see a strict division between the parts. Maybe you have some more.
I think just
Holly.
Yeah, I mean it's a really interesting context because Riksbyggen are, I think, the second largest co-housing provider in Sweden. So they're trying to balance more than we would in the UK, which is trying to balance affordable housing and kind of market housing within one block. They're trying to do that across their whole portfolio. This is a really central location. So they've definitely been describing a kind of target market of older people who are interested in having sort of city living. If you're trying to say that there was a single person that was in mind, it was that kind of description. But there's also been a lot of push to make sure that the housing is appropriate for families, that there's play included in those open spaces. So it's sort of inclusive in that way. And I think in terms of the target audience for the office block and the kind of more commercial uses, I've described a little bit how that area is changing. Malmö, in many ways, and Sweden overall, I think, punches above its weight in terms of some of those more entrepreneurial, innovative, like King Games, who do Candy Crush, I think, are from Malmö. It's Oatly are in the building just opposite, which Stefan and his team did. So there's some quite interesting companies coming out of a comparatively small place. And I think this sort of demonstrating innovation on sustainability, using an interesting place in an interesting way, all of that is to drive, I think, and attract, or in my mind as we've been developing those proposals, to attract those ambitious companies to come and take up office space. So it's not just sort of, I don't know, accountants. It's like, who are your most ambitious people, and bring them here and come to Malmö. is how I've always understood it.
That's a lovely place to end it. Thank you very much, Holly and Stefan, and to our judges for your insightful questions. We're going to have to move on to our next project now.
Thank you.
So, next to the stage is South Bank, Bratislava, Slovakia, for Penta Real Estate with Studio Igre West, Snøhetta, Bro Architecti and Pantograph. And this is presented by David West, founding director at Studio Igre West, and Jakob Ertl, design development manager at Penta Real Estate. Hello, David.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
You've got 10 minutes.
All good. Good afternoon. So, Jakob, we're going to start with you. Hi, who are you? Where are you from? Jakob, can you hear us? Well, that's good. While Jakob's joining us, my name is David West. I'm founding director of Studio Igre West, and we're very, very delighted to be sharing with you today our vision for Bratislava South Bank. Our client, Jakob Ertl from Bratislava, the company called Penta, I hope is joining us. We can see him. Jakob, are you online? He's apologising. Okay, I'll carry on, and hopefully Jakob will be able to join us as we go. Next slide, please. Very good. Okay, so our site sits to the immediate south of the Danube River. We are literally, the challenge is to actually grow the city to the south of the Danube. So historic town, you can sort of see there marked as Old Town, that then grew into the city centre. As the city centre moves eastwards because of the protected area around Bratislava Castle and the Presidential Palace, new projects are emerging. The North Bank around Eurovia Embankment, and an amazing project called Sky Park, which was delivered by our client Penta. A competition for the Winter Harbour has literally just been announced today, and that's to the east of the Eurovia Embankment. The challenge for us, though, and the competition that was set by Penta about 18 months ago, was to transform the South Bank area of the city. As you can see, as you glimpse this immediately to the south of the Danube, it's a particularly verdant and natural landscape, but it's completely and utterly cut off from the rest of the city by large-scale infrastructure, large-scale highways that are particularly unfriendly in terms of the domestic experience and the kind of the day-to-day lives of citizens. So not many people register this place as their environment, as a place that they're welcome. And so the reason why we entered this award is because this project is actually all about empowering the city and the citizens of the city to fall in love with the second half of their city, the South Bank. You know, if one thinks about the potential of London's South Bank, how important it has been over the last 25 years to discover, in particular, the quality of promenading, the cultural experiences, the playful experiences. And so that's the challenge for this project. The next slide. So hopefully we can sort of see our site. So this next slide captures our overarching design concept at the competition stage. We were very struck when we visited the site by the abundance of nature and the fact that the project to date had actually been very much urban, very strongly urban, with perimeter block buildings really crunching the pedestrian experience and frankly wiping out all of the trees. And that was enshrined in the planning policy. And luckily enough, Penta had done this design competition, and we were able to come in with a completely and utterly different approach, a much more harmonious approach that balanced nature and habitation, humans and habitat, and really tried to get a blend of conditions together. So our approach was actually to work with the natural topography of the site, a series of bowls that kind of actually acted as a resilient kind of condition in terms of a climatic landscape, to preserve as many trees as possible in terms of a starting point of a positive conversation about the future type of city in terms of the balance of humans and habitat, and then to actually create landforms that weren't in square formats, kind of forced perimeters onto the site, but were far more organic, almost like eroded landforms, like banks of sand that were carved in harmony with nature. Luckily, that was the concept that our client actually fell in love with. We won the international competition in a 50-50 collaboration with Sneheta, based from Innsbruck, our studio, and a lovely local practice called Grow, which at the time was 1 person strong. And we've helped kind of sustain and actually grow their studio ever since we won this competition. Our overarching concept was to undulate the buildings, fan the buildings out, and actually invite people in. So our opening gesture was to actually pull the building line back and create a boardwalk that would invite everybody from the kind of the main cycle trail that actually currently exists adjacent to the site, retaining the trees and creating a sequence of bowls that would actually be the starting point of city life. The kind of the platform for change for the citizens to be involved. This diagram captures the kind of the level of retention of the mature trees that we're managing to do on the site, a huge quantum of trees that we're actually able to retain, some of which weren't worth retaining. They were actually sort of in a kind of a rather decrepit state, but we'll still be keeping on site. But others, majestic trees, were able to actually shape our kind of strategy around. The bowl concept not only retains the trees, but it actually allows us to actually create a natural kind of access to the earth in terms of flood resilience, which is again a very important kind of relationship with the River Danube, but also allows us to create really adventurous play from the outset. So our concept becomes the cycle trail in orange, the boardwalk in that tan, soft flowing form around those retained trees, and then a tram network that will actually be starting on site 2027-28 to actually start to unlock the public transport opportunity. The form flows and invites nature all the way through, again responding to the habitat and to the trees that we found. So it really is a nature first. I think a lot of people say landscape first at the moment. This could not be more landscape first. The form and the urbanity is completely and utterly shaped by the nature of this place and what's been there before we've actually kind of had the chance to populate it. And then this series of bowls actually become the foundation of the place. I think in your kind of what's a good project, they talk about how do citizens get the chance to access and feel included and feel welcomed to the future place. We could not have tried harder to do that in this project. Our starting point is play, is people, is invitation. So we end up with a series of community creating bowls. The first one is play that will actually be delivered in phase 1, again using the level change between an embankment and the existing site condition to create a myriad of really fun playable landscapes. The second one, the urban sports bowl, takes on the underbelly of the street to then deliver something really extraordinary and already starting that place. Tranquility bowl, a little bit further along, a calmer, more meditative space. Forest bowl, the heart of the kind of the employment campus that we're crafting. Culture bowl, a new opportunity for a community-based theatre. And so rather than just the sort of speculative real estate development just filling up the site, it really becomes this invitation to the city, to the citizens of Bratislava to discover the second half. And Jakob and his team at Penta have already started. So halfway through the process, we crafted this sweet little intervention, which we call the red hot chili pepper under the bridge. This sweet little collection of cafe, citizen empowerment kind of moment, really sweet sweets from Vienna, the kind of the seats you probably recognize, but in red, and a series of workshops to gather people's ideas. What's unusual about this project for Bratislava is they don't normally do citizen empowerment and citizen engagement. So Jakob and his team really led a kind of a very important path here to say this is how one can really allow citizens to feel part of their city. We learned from that, decided to make our first phase the most immersive, the most interactive, and the most adventurous playground you can possibly imagine. My favorite playground is still the Olympic Park North, and I think this is like 3 times bigger than that in terms of its aspiration. So it's a huge gift to lead out with for the citizens of Bratislava. Really playful, really 3-dimensional, and of course working from a sustainability perspective too. Tommy here is our lead landscape architect on the project, ready for questions after this. And what's exciting about the project is that we mix a myriad of homes, about 1,300 homes, with a significant amount of job creation, about circa 6,000 jobs, actually blended with a place that feels like it's been shaped with and by nature. It feels completely natural, completely organic, stepping kind of forms. But most importantly, the gift is back to the people of Bratislava to actually engage with this piece of city. And yeah, with that, we conclude our presentation.
Just maybe from my side, I would like to.
Oh, you're there. Thank you, Jakob.
I'm here. Apologize for some technical issues in the beginning. So just to conclude, from the very beginning, we understand importance of this site for the whole city. Condition is like different than from other Central Europe cities, because right now Bratislava is just on one side of the river, and we understood our responsibility that we have to bring this part of the city back to the people and give it to them. And also we understand the importance of the greenery and nature, which is there. That's why we organized the competition where many famous architects were involved, and we are very happy that David decided to join together with Sneheta and Gro, and brought this unbelievable concept of balls and creating space for the nature. So thank you for that, and we are looking forward for the project.
Thank you,
Thank you very much. What inspirational images and a really fun playground. I'm going to invite our judges back to the stage now to ask you some questions. So we've got Michaela up first this time.
Super. Sorry, just finding my microphone. Yeah, fantastic project, really exciting. I love the greenery and the trees. And I also really like that you're starting with the play park. Often these sorts of things, amenities are left till the end. As a transport planner, I'm obviously interested in how you are rolling out the development in line with, say, the tram network and the public transport. Are you trying to align a bit of that? I see that there are some bike networks, and I was just wondering how you're kind of ensuring that everyone's just not kind of driving across to the north side, or is that a priority at all?
So it's a huge priority. One of the best things about the absolute location of the site, of the Danube and the amount of nature, is actually we are immediately adjacent to the Bratislava equivalent of a cycle superhighway. It's incredibly direct and incredibly immediate to three bridge connections directly into the city centre, and then beyond to the countryside outside of the city. So it's very, very popular, which is why you probably noticed in some of the conversation images we had actually cyclists kind of stopping off. And that's one of the reasons why the sports bowl will be all about a mobility hub as it matures.
I think just one other thing is the site is very walkable to the city centre. So I think that's a kind of important part of this southern side of the Danube, bringing that, connecting that better to the city, because there's 3 bridges that connect across the Danube, and you can walk very quickly, 15 minutes or so from the old town directly to the site. So it's very accessible both by bike and by foot. And then of course the tram network will come forward with the first phase, and then rolled into the second and the third phase as well.
Maybe just to add from my side, as Southbank is part of the wider scheme, there is also a need for pedestrian bridge in the future, which will connect those 2 banks. And this is also something very important, which will happen in the future.
Great. Thank you very much. James, I'll come to you next.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for the very interesting presentation. The giant road running through the middle of everything, obviously having trees and planting helps with pollution and attenuating sound. But I was wondering if you had any particular insight into kind of how you're treating the road and the pollution and the sound coming from it.
Yeah, it is a giant road. I'm glad you noticed that. It's the least favourable part of the site. And quite consciously, we've placed the office accommodation adjacent to the road. It's obviously the thing that's easier to act as a kind of a buffering element. And it's obviously open plan, which allows us to make sure that we can actually ventilate and kind of gain positive access to slightly better air conditions on either side. But we can actually use the office as quite a protective edge. The offices step up to quite some scale. You know, the first phase building's up to about 7 stories. The road probably hits about 3 stories of that. So again, that acts as a starting point of a buffer. And then the next phase is actually step up to larger floor areas, like 14, 15 stories. So hopefully that campus will start to create some level of acoustic buffer. The fourth bowl, the forest bowl, is actually our commitment to increased tree planting in and around the interface with the road. That was why it's called the forest bowl. We plan on planting as many trees as we possibly can to create that kind of environmental kind of climatic condition as good as possible. Don't know if Tommy, you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think the Forest Bowl is where we are most intensely planting trees across master plan, but also all the way along that piece of road infrastructure. It's a boulevard of trees both sides. There's also cycle infrastructure, segregated cycle infrastructure both sides of the road. All the car parking is tucked away underneath the buildings. And then I think it's also important to say that that road is really just serving this new master plan. So in terms of trip numbers, whilst in plan, it does look like quite a significant road. It's not a huge road that's connecting, as a through route through the master plan. So it's actually quite a local road that's connecting a new residential development.
No, I think James means the giant bridge. That's what you're talking about, James.
Yeah.
Yes. So just to confirm.
Also to clarify,
that already exists.
Right.
And, it's a very big road. But hopefully the level of planting we have in mind will ameliorate, but also that kind of strategy with the offices. But I would like to say that with the big road comes an amazing underbelly. And the underbelly allows us to do performative, extraordinary things, which is why we've started there. You know, we've dealt with the constraint. It's a big constraint, but hey, we see it as an opportunity to create the underbelly of life citizens, you know, hence skate park already there. Let's build it up. Hence the sports bowl. So we're embracing that weirdness and trickiness of the site to actually create some cool stuff too. Hence hats off to our client to allow us to put the red hot chili pepper under the bridge saying, you're welcome, come in, it's cool, let's get busy here. And so it's a problem, but it's also an opportunity.
Maybe just to add, we also negotiate with authorities about, for example, reducing the speed on the bridge. So it looks like a highway. It's not. So it's still like internal city network. So there is a 60 kilometers per hour. So it's not so noisy as it looks.
Yeah, I'm not blaming you for the road. It's really interesting how you've responded to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Daisy, do you want to come in now?
Yeah, thanks for that presentation. I love the nature-led approach right from the start. The polls are really interesting response. So thank you for that. I'm quite curious about in your submission, you talked about the meanwhile activation strategy and how you're using that meanwhile activation to start to put in, look at success metrics and start to look at how you respond over time to the master plan as it emerges.
Well, it's a big project for a small city, but a small city with quite a big ambition. It's just created a design kind of architecture centre right in the heart of the city, led by Petra Marco, who's just launched this competition today. And it's really exciting to see a small city with a really design focus and an amazing client who care about design and driving quality forward. Our first phase will be the playground, the first big bowl, the generous boardwalk, and the you're welcome. Hey citizens, come here, please come. This is yours. You know, it's a major change. I can't exaggerate it. The planning process before we were involved was almost 20 years long, and the design guidelines are strict. Perimeter blocks right to the back of the cycleway, no breathing space whatsoever. So it was quite a radical move for us to pull that back. So because of that, phase 1 is boardwalk, is playground, is coming is tree retention. There will be the first fingers of residential accommodation and one office building, going back to James's point, to create that acoustic buffer, but also to actually kind of create a sense of place and mixed use. At the same time, we then have two more very substantial phases, and we're exploring through the community engagement and sort of citizen empowerment part of the project, what might we do? So, for example, we've already created a whole series of jobs by creating this kind of pop-up space for a kind of a vegan restaurant that's actually popping up underneath the skate park. We're in conversations with a pump track operator to take the entirety of the eastern portion of the site, because we won't be needing it for at least, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. So why be greedy? Why sit on it? So we're looking to, again, create the culture of play and you're welcome with that meanwhile uses.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, David and Jakob. And that's
cool.
Really...
Sorry about our technical hitch. Hopefully you could get our messages clear enough. And thank you very much for shortlisting us. And it's a super cool place.
I think you're welcome is the right thing to say.
It is. That is a very important part of the project. So thank you. Yeah, you got it.
I could burst into song, but I won't.
Exactly. Do it. It's live. Moana specials. Thank you. You're welcome.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to our final project this afternoon, which is the Olympic Plaza transformation in Calgary, in Canada, for Verkland Centre and the City of Calgary, with Calgary Municipal Land Corporation, GH3 Architecture, CCXA Landscape Architecture, and Belleville Placemaking. And that is going to be presented this afternoon to us by Mark Halley, who's the Principal Landscape Architect at CC×A Architects. Pace Sajjad, I'm sorry, my pronunciation's terrible. You might have to help me with that, Mark. And Nathan Flatt, who is a Director of Design at Calgary Municipal Land Corporation. You've got 10 minutes for your presentation, and then we will bring on our judges again, who are still on the stage. It's getting towards the end of the afternoon. You're all doing brilliantly. I think this is the last presentation that we've got. Just a reminder that you can find out who the winners of the pineapples are at the Fabulous Pineapple Ceremony. I can't recommend it heartily enough. You know how some award ceremonies are boring? This isn't boring, and the food's really good. So I would really recommend it. It's fab. It's a fab evening. It's at Trinity Boyne Wharf in London. And also to remind you that there are tickets available for the pineapples in Box Park in Wembley on the 10th of June as well. So I think we're going to welcome Mark and Nathan to the stage any moment now. But I'm not in charge of moving people to and from the stage, so hopefully you guys will leave and Mark and Nathan will pop on. But yes, I hope you agree. We've had 5 fantastic presentations so far. And this is last, but not by no means least. And after Mark and Nathan have finished presenting, we're going to retire and deliberate in private. And then, as I say, announce the winners at the festival's big party. Oh, here we go. I think just me on the stage now. We've got Nathan and Mark who are going to join us, I think. Just waiting for their presentation to be uploaded. Ah, there you are. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Leah. And there's Nathan. Okay, great.
Excellent.
We're ready to go.
Off you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Leah. We're thrilled to be here. This project is a revitalization of a public gathering space that was actually created for the 1988 Olympic Winter Games in Calgary. It'll transform the plaza into a modern, inclusive, and flexible cultural landmark within a new expanded arts campus. It'll seamlessly connect indoor and outdoor environments And the revitalization of the entire campus represents the largest cultural infrastructure investment underway in Canada. It also includes a new 170,000 square foot theater facility, as well as transformation of an existing art center that's adjacent to the site. On completion, these projects will create a cohesive, world-class arts and culture destination within Calgary's downtown. Supported by our construction manager, Ellis Dawn, and project manager Collier's project leaders, as the development manager, CMLC stewards the design and the construction on behalf of the City of Calgary and the Workland Center, who are the operators, the programmers, and the stewards of the campus. The collaborative partnership of GH3, CCXA, and Belleville Placemaking was selected from 25 competitive local and international RFP respondents. And their approach is to design the physical infrastructure, but also equally importantly, the experience by thinking about comprehensive programming that gives the plaza vitality throughout the day and throughout the seasons. The programming pyramid concept that you see on the right considers the experience of the plaza from the everyday interactions, from weekly rendezvous, monthly specialty shows, all the way up to annual large events like large concerts, holiday celebrations, and festivals. A number of infrastructure projects in the 1980s, including the 7th Avenue light rail train project, as well as our new municipal building, created a bookend to the downtown and effectively closed off pedestrian access on 8th Avenue east of this plaza. Since 2007, major projects have focused on urban regeneration east of the site and have created a new East Village connecting through an award-winning public library as a gateway. The result of these moves has been a shift in the center of gravity of downtown, whereby formerly existing at the edge, the Olympic Plaza and its surrounding civic anchors, including the Workland Center, Convention Center, and Museum, have become the center of downtown. The Olympic Plaza project will be a catalyst that knits together and connects these critical cultural anchors of arts and culture in the city. Mark.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. It's this pivot point between being on the edge to being in the center of downtown that we really wanted to respond to. This is a pivot point in the raison d'etre of Olympic Plaza. It was originally created for the medal ceremonies and large gatherings during the 1988 Winter Olympics, but now it's transitioning into the heart of a cultural campus that's undergoing a major expansion. And through consultation, one of the important elements that was really reinforced was the memory of the Olympic Games. This was kind of when Calgary went onto the world stage and really impressed everybody, and it was a really important moment. And this consultation kind of said, we need to remember that moment. And you can see the logo from the 1988 Olympics. It was a really great graphic design from the beginning. It's timeless. And we were able to, as a centerpiece, embed that logo. Is it a maple leaf? Is it a snowflake? Is it a deconstructed Olympic rings logo? It's everything. And we were able to combine this into the centerpiece, this large fountain, which is, we're calling the Sunflake. And it kind of becomes the center point, the center of gravity, and the meetup point that just naturally informs wayfinding. Now, Olympic Plaza fans, it could possibly be one of the most important performance venues of the whole cultural campus. And just like when you go to the Paris Opera House, the chandelier in the great concert hall is the thing that unifies the crowd. And that is the triangulation moment offered by that fountain in the middle. But from that point, it's the center of gravity. From there radiates a kind of a coherent language that also accommodates a lot of flexibility. The center activation, in the third image on the slide, is where we have this skating in winter, interactive water feature in the summer. It becomes the spectacle, place to see and to be seen. After that is the importance, the priority of emphasizing active edges through the installation of a new pavilion on the east side on the right, and also activating the thresholds of the buildings being constructed and readapted on the west and south. On 8th Avenue in the lower left is kind of the conceptual lobby of a theater where people land and find their way through. It's going to be like an alley of trees. After that are the loggias, extensions of the interior spaces that allow for perched stages for like buskers and informal performances, to expansion of the indoor program like lounges. Green rooms, kind of a riff on the theater typology, is where biodiversity has its chance, freshness, and a chance to reuse stormwater. And that all comes together to create a place that's good for the event of 5,000, as well as for the daily theater of life. If we look at the plan as it kind of comes together, it's coherent, but it adapts. We have this radiating paving pattern with 4 shades of stone. The current redesign of the plaza occupies about 96% of what was previously the active use of the plaza. And you can see the centerpiece where there's interactive water and skating, the vegetation buffer, the pavilion on the right side, which helps to buffer the noise coming off of a very busy road to the east, McLeod Field, but also providing food and beverage for interactive retail, as well as washrooms. Now, from a sustainability point of view, I think in addition to being constructed of durable materials that are going to last for over a century, unlike the previous incarnation, and creating a space with long sight lines and that's fully accessible by eliminating previous obstructions like a lot of stairs. But if we peel the surface and look what's going on below the ground, there's a lot of effort to really make this space perform from a sustainability point of view. You can see all of those blue rectangles. All of the surface water is captured, redirected, and diverted to stormwater, I guess, soil zones below. And they're large soil zones, about 30 cubic meters per tree. So in addition to the 22 trees that were preserved, we're adding the new trees of large soil volumes that help to absorb stormwater, evapotranspirate, and also that stormwater is going to be going back into the groundwater below, minimizing stormwater discharges from the site. From a biodiversity point of view, this is a plaza for a lot of people, so it's difficult to create a natural condition. We're trying our best to insert this layer with native planting and also large contiguous soil volumes that will help to sequester carbon over the long term. And just one more thing I'll add to this is the fountain acts also like a giant sprinkler. So on heat alert days, it's a chance for the community to come together and cool down. Now, the last one is just the idea from the beginning was this notion of hardware versus software. The hardware, the bricks and mortar, that's the design of the space. Adaptable, timeless, made of durable materials, comfortable, safe, well illuminated. These are kind of the easy things, but the challenging and more sort of unpredictable are the software. How is this place programmed? And this is going to be treated like an exterior theater space and managed in the same kind of way, with programming for concerts and events, but not just shows, also for Christmas markets, pop-ups, different kinds of local community events, festivals. It's designed to create a space that's going to function really, really well for 5,000 as it will for 50. And it's designed with a plug-and-play approach so that any kind of configuration of event can freely adapt itself to the layout of the plaza.
So as Mark had mentioned, the design is really the incorporation of ideas that were generated through a very large public engagement process by which 3,000 Calgarians provided feedback. So this included winter skating, honoring the Olympic legacy of the site, offering food and beverage, looking at outdoor green space, and also ensuring the safety and activation, made sure that it's a very welcoming and inclusive place. The design minimizes grade transitions and it accommodates a range of mobility needs, which recognizes the diversity of its users. And it strikes a balance in connecting the history of the space as well as looking to the future of this still young city by creating a place where all Calgarians will feel at home. On completion, the Workland Centre will begin its comprehensive campus programming and placemaking, which will activate indoor and outdoor venues and will maintain public access to the civic amenity. The transformation of the Olympic Plaza builds on the City of Calgary's downtown revitalization efforts, which is to improve livability and vibrancy and to attract new investment and talent to the city. The project plays a critical role by breathing new life into the downtown through strategic investment in public space and into cultural institutions. As part of the expanded Workland Centre campus, the new Olympic Plaza will employ a unified vision and a coordinated effort to bring immediate and ongoing economic benefits to support the city's tourism and hospitality sector, also expanding opportunities for local artists, performers, and audiences to experience arts, all while connecting the surrounding public realm and vibrancy into the city's economic heart. That's our presentation. Thank you very much for allowing us opportunity to present today, and we're looking forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Great timing. And what a sort of beautiful and inspirational project as well. It's a really inclusive and lovely space. Again, I'd like to go and visit as well. So we'll now bring our judges back to the stage, and they're going to ask you some questions. So we've got 10 minutes for questions, and James is going to go first, followed by Daisy and then Michaela. So James, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Thank you for that presentation. You obviously did a very large and in-depth consultation with Calgarians, kind of citywide. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the hyper-local communities that you consulted with and how their inputs are incorporated into the project.
Certainly, yes. So our engagement process started very early on, and there's been a really interesting relation between how Calgarians feel the legacy of the site has served the city, and in the intervening 35 years, how that has changed over time. And so what was very interesting to us in speaking with those that either kind of live near the site in the downtown or those that come perhaps once a week or less, it was interesting to hear about this idea of program. And if there wasn't something happening at the site, there wasn't a reason to be at the site. And so what we had heard, this resounding kind of echoing of this idea of skating in the wintertime, because Calgary is a very winter city. And if you've ever visited here, you know that I believe 2 days ago, we were at minus 22 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow we'll be at plus 10, then we'll be back to minus 15 in 2 days. So it's kind of tricky to figure out what you can do with a site like that. So when we hear about skating, Mark has done a brilliant job and his team of figuring out how can we start activating this site throughout all of those seasons. And so this idea of using water as an animator and the centerpiece, as well as incorporating skating in the wintertime, using a system that enables us to have skating even if it is plus 15 in the afternoon in the middle of winter. So I think that was a lot of the feedback that we heard was how can you make sure that this is a place that has enough activation and reasons to be there that it does feel safe and inhabited and a place that's welcoming that I want to be in.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Daisy, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you. Yeah, brilliant project. It's a public realm. What an amazing project to be a part of. I love the idea of being able to look back, to look ahead as well. So get experiences of the past 40 years. I'm quite curious to understand a bit more about the design approach to the ground floor uses of the buildings nearby, and how if the designs kind of if you were able to kind of change anything based on some of the ground floor uses, and likewise any design thinking internally changed because of some of your ideas for the external plaza.
I'll start and then I'll let Mark come in. We put Mark in a difficult position where the Performing Arts Center design was partly underway by the time we brought Mark and his team in as the landscape team to design everything except the building. And so what's happened in the intervening time is that Mark's team has thought really carefully about how those indoor lobby spaces and the public spaces of the buildings can relate to the plaza. And so not only have they thought about how the plaza will function, but they've thought about that interaction through the glazing of the building. And so we're fortunate that a large percentage of the glazing that faces into the plaza is fully transparent and we can see back and forth between the building. But the idea of loges, and Mark can kind of expand on this, about actually creating a theater within the plaza that then interacts with the ground floors of those adjacent spaces, to me is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'll just continue from there. It's that was the reason for having the pavilion. That was really kind of key, because in the previous version of the Soul campus in the municipal district, there were a lot of blind walls, and we were a little bit behind the construction of the theater next door, and so they had a lot of transparency to the lobby. But we really pushed and pulled with that team because there was still some time before their DD window closed to kind of encourage more porosity between their lobby and the public space, to the point where the lodges do double duty. So the way they can be managed, they can provide space for buskers and shows, DJs, things like that. But at the same time, provide lounge space. So any kind of bar service can be carried outside and have a pre-show spritz on the afternoon during the sunset time. That's on the west side where the theater is, but where the pavilion is, we have operable doors. So the indoor-outdoor connections are really, really strong. And under the long eave to kind of cast shadows, provide some weather protection along, and allow this kind of really fantastic view of the skyline behind the full mise-en-scène and to watch the people. But those are the active programs. And then the future transformation on the south side envisions even more porosity. That's the next and final stage ultimately for development of the edges.
Thank you. That's really nice to hear that. That's Michaela, we'll come to you next, please.
Thanks so much. I think I agree with you, Leah. When I sort of saw the presentation and I read your entry, I was like, oh, I'd love to visit Calgary. So I think that's what you want from a project, isn't it? And I also love the idea of a water feature, because I think that, you know, you have a fantastic program that you've planned, but water is such an incredible activator. When I think of family holidays, wherever there's a bit of water, we're always splashing about. I think what I'm interested in is I have worked in community projects and in a community building, and sometimes it's obviously you've done really good community engagement beforehand, but is there a way that you can continue that as part of your programming? Do you have a kind of team that's attached to this project to kind of keep that linkage between your programming and the community? Yeah, I'm just interested how you take this forward.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. So CMLC is a very unique entity because we are a wholly owned subsidiary of the City of Calgary. And we have a mandate essentially to not only build these spaces, but to also program and activate them for long term. So we work with the Workland Center, who are the arts organization that will be stewarding the space. But as part of kind of our district, it's called the Rivers District in which CMLC operates, we do actually undergo engagement throughout almost constantly. We're working with community and finding what kind of programming and how we can better the spaces that we steward. So that will certainly be part of our kind of ongoing programming and evaluation of the design. And I think Mark's team has done a great job of making sure that the design is so flexible that we have ability to kind of mold and play with what can happen in the space. And those big anchors have been designed there such that we can really create all kinds of activations in all of these seasons, but we can also respond to how the public reacts and what they kind of feel is important and what is successful, so that we can constantly adapt and move within that.
Can I maybe just add one thing to that, Nathan? Because as you were describing earlier, before it was kind of on the edge of downtown, it was a bit of a cul-de-sac condition, but now with all the infill and the intensification, more residential development downtown, it's becoming the center. And so kind of envision this as being the town square. And I think, as you said, Nathan, with CMLC's outreach efforts, that'll be constantly tuned to the evolving needs of those communities. So it's interesting to, and we don't know what those community needs are yet, but we want to make sure the flexibility is built in so that when they do emerge, they can be deployed.
Does Calgary already have similar spaces to this? Is this a very new thing?
Well, I would say that very few cities have a space quite as spectacular as this
Well,
will be.
yeah.
I have to say from what I
But do a similar thing, similar function.
But we haven't seen any central, this has always been kind of the central urban space, and it has never been tremendously successful since the Olympic Winter Games. It's always functioned, and we've been impressed with how flexible groups have been in kind of activating what was there. But being able to design now for something that can then become this flexible and active all year round will be very new for the city.
Yeah, I think that's interesting to have a sense of that flexibility and how it develops and grows. It'll be really interesting to watch.
Well, you're all invited in 2028 for a grand opening.
We'll take you up on that, I'm sure. That's excellent. Thank you very much, Mark and Nathan, for presenting such a beautiful and inclusive and exciting project to us as well. Lots of lovely emojis coming up from the bottom of the screen there for you. That is all our projects for this afternoon, and what a fantastic selection, what a shortlist that we've had. So you'll have seen there's some little boxes popping up in the bottom of my screen anyway, saying come to the Pineapples, come to the Festival of Place, and there's links there for tickets if you want that. We are now, me and the judges, we're going to retire to make, so the judges can make their deliberations. So that's all from us for now. You can keep watching the Pineapples. There are lots more judging sessions over the next couple of days. So check out the schedule button for everything that's on, or you can watch back as well. So if there's something you've missed, then feel free to rewind and watch that back. Thank you everyone for being here, and I'll see you at the Pineapples. Buy your tickets now. Goodbye, thank you.